Hi, just wanted to go over maintenance flowchart and basically how owners can expect maintenance to go. So, in our maintenance manual, we've created a flowchart that summarizes the maintenance process. So, and I thought that owners might find this helpful. So, it starts in this red box. This is the starting part of a work order, and then we have a follow-up part of the work order, and that's the ending part. So, kind of the ending sequence and the starting sequence. Okay. So there's more to it than this, but this is a simplification as all flow charts are. So essentially, what we have here is the the basically the work order can be entered in 4 different ways right now. There's an online portal the tenants can go in and put a property system work order directly into our system through Propertyware. And then we also allow tenants to email, call us, and then we have the night service, which is a specialized maintenance service, and those get emailed into us as well, and then we input them into the system next day. Okay, so uh, we have a specific process for work orders, and when we email a work order, every work order has a work order number and an address in the subject line. Work orders need to be formatted uh, with bulleted points, so it can't just be this long paragraph or a rant because the tenant totally does that. So we make so it's important for whoever's managing the work orders to take that and number it so that we have clarity as to exactly which issue was handled, which wasn't, how each one's individually going to be handled, and there's not confusion by numbering it and putting it one on each line. It's much easier to tell whether something's done or not as we talk through them in the following time. So a little organization up front actually helps a lot in the process. Um, Believe me, tenants can make these crazy work orders, and it's hard to even figure out what's supposed to be done for anybody, let alone some kind of maintenance tech who's out on the road with their cell phone trying to read a work order. So, so once the work order is formatted correctly, um, we try to get clarity on it, and that's part of the formatting process. If it's a phone call, then we're asking the questions that first call. If not, we're emailing or calling back, trying to get clarity before we dispatch, or so we know how to dispatch basically, because the tenant's going to say such and such is broke. Well, how broke is it? In what way is it broke? Is it broke all the time? You're having questions like that. So clarity is really important, not to waste time and money in terms of work orders. And it's something that we do work on improving all the time. Getting better at asking those questions. Sometimes we'll ask the tenants for pictures even. It depends obviously on how urgent things are and how obvious it is based on their description. But frankly, sometimes our maintenance tech goes out there and has some different idea than what the tenant does. So it's best to get on the same page before they go out there. And so pictures help. Any kind of history, we encourage our people to look up work order history and check that out. But of course, on a property that's has a lot of work orders, you may not. It may take a while to do that, but normally it's worth the time because it'll save time overall to brief oneself on what's happened with a property previously. So once we've gotten clarity, that means we can make a decision. And so from there, we go straight down to here. And there's this kind of dotted line. So uh, the question is, if are we going to get owner permission or not? Okay. Now, normally we're either giving permission or we're giving notification. Okay. Asking for permission or giving notification. Okay. So we're going to be asking for permission on certain items. And those items tend to be items that are not required, or they're not urgent and they're over the maintenance allowance that we've agreed to with the owner, which is normally $500 as of today that I'm making this video. So, so um, if it's not urgent and if it's not required, and or if it's not required, is when we're getting owner permission. Okay. Oftentimes you don't always know the cost when you send a worker out there, so that's the caveat. Sometimes we tell a worker to do something, and it ends up being more than we think it'll be, because every house is different, and it's impossible to exactly predict what you're going to find when you get into a situation, when you open up a wall or whatever. So anyways, if we need to get permission before even sending to someone, we do. Sometimes the permission process though ends up being further down the line, like the vendor goes out there, then you're like, oh, well, we need permission for that, once we find out that's what we actually need to do, whatever that is. So regardless, we kind of go through this progression when dispatching. So this whole orange line is kind of like is the whole everything it takes to dispatch. So we email the vendor. We have a specific format. We use we have a template that we use so that we can get all the information we need from that vendor. He replies back with everything. We have a follow-up email that automatically comes back into our coordinator's inbox to remind them to follow up more, just to make sure things are done. We put it on the calendar for our vendor as well, so that and we keep a very tight calendar with the vendors to manage their time well and efficiently. Then we email the tenant and just an acknowledgement, hey, we dispatched vendor after talking with you and everything. Dispatch vendor, here's the work order number. Here's what you do if things don't happen right. It's just a whole template we send there, and we're very careful about describing that template, and we continually modify and upgrade that to continue to make interactions better with the tenant. And then we also send the owner an email template saying, hey, we dispatched this, we'll let you know how it goes, type of thing. So the owner gets a notification. They should never get like a bill, for instance, and never even have known that there was a maintenance issue. That's a failure on at this step if for some reason that happens, and we don't like it when that happens. So then a little bit later, I have a little clock here to indicate that this is a follow-up later. This whole follow-up section happens. So the vendor replies to the same email they got right here. It's going to have the work order number and address in the subject line, so we can easily follow through all the history of emails and things like that and what's happened. He's going to include pictures, line-by-line item notes. Remember, we have multiple line items here. And he's also going to give accounting. There's questions like, hey, did you how much of this should be sent to tenant to pay back the owner on this, that type of thing, because if it's tenant caused damage. We forward it to the vendor. I mean, we forward it to our accounting department to put the bill on the owner's account and pay out the vendor. And then we do a tenant survey just to say, hey, was the vendor professional in their behavior? Did they do do they do professional work, basically? And then you go to and then we have a whole a task that we actually stick on that work order. We send the email out and close the work order, but we go ahead and send a task out, put a task out that stays on that work order, whether it's closed or not, until we've heard back from the tenant. We continue to call the tenant. We'll even go to the house if necessary, because for us it's extremely important that the tenant says, yes, this is done. Because we have had in times past, we've had things that weren't done or weren't done quite like we'd like them, and the tenant never said anything about them. So it's one of the ways we make sure we follow up and make sure that there's a quality process and that things are getting done the way you would expect them to be done. So the way we would expect them to be done for ourselves. So this is our system. It's reasonably simple. It's a few steps when you really look at it, but when you lay it out, it can all be done in one foul swoop oftentimes. So it's a way of saving time and making sure things are done right. If you have any questions about our maintenance or anything like that, feel free to give us an email. Support@propertymanagementoh.com. Again, that's support@propertymanagementoh.com. Or if this is on a blog post or embedded in an email, feel free to respond to the email or the blog post or on this YouTube video. And have a great day. Bye-bye.